Good afternoon, welcome to this meeting of the Southwark Cabinet. Can I please ask you to switch your mobile phones to silent whilst you're in this meeting? Filming and recording are permitted at our council meetings, and we always ask for any filming to be considerate towards other people in the room, and please do take care not to disturb the proceedings. I've received apologies for absence from Councillor Mark Williams. In terms of notification of urgent items, item 7, deputation requests. We have one deputation request from the Rotherhithe Area Housing Forum, who I can see here, and item 8, Policy and Resources Strategy 2018-19. No other urgent items have been notified. Similarly, no closed items for this meeting, just the closed minutes to be agreed. Disclosure of interest and dispensations. Are there any disclosable pecuniary interests or dispensations that anyone needs to declare? No. There are no public questions. So we move to consider the minutes. Can we agree the open minutes of the meeting held on the 31st of October, which are page 1 to 17 of the main agenda, a lengthy meeting? Okay. Thank you, colleagues. So we move on to item 7, deputation requests. The deputation request received from Elephant and Castle Traders, which we've been notified of, the shopping centre has now been withdrawn. So we have one deputation request from Rotherhithe Area Housing Forum. Barry Duckett, Chair of the Rotherhithe Area Housing Forum and Chair of Canada Estate TRA, Jan Duckett, Sue Chalice, Jill Davis and Julie Phipps are down on my list of deputation members. Barry?
Yes, sir.
Would you like to come forward?
Not really. Yeah, I will.
Go on then.
Come on.
Come on, team. And you have 5 minutes, as you know, to address us, and then we've got up to 5 minutes for questions from us. You've also, I think, very helpfully distributed you distributed a written deputation as well. So Barry, over to you.
Right, thank you very much. For item 14 on your agenda, since 2016, council estate residents have felt the impact of the 1% national rent reduction every year. Southwark estimates that by 2020 we will lose nearly £63 million from housing revenue account. Southwark has penciled in a 2% pay rise, but we've heard today on the news it's a 3.1% rise in inflation for staff, which is the least we can do when inflation is over 3%. But we also need to maintain and modernise and improve services and properties, including the growth of our areas like Rotherhithe. Our deputation calls for the Cabinet to write again to, sorry I'll get his name always wrong, Sajid Javid, Secretary of State for Communities and Local Government, asking him to cancel a 1% rent reduction. And we also ask the Cabinet to write to Alok Sharma, Minister of State for Housing and Planning, asking him to provide government grants to carry out necessary fireworks. Let's also please ensure that TRA committee members are fully involved in helping to plan the fire safety works on the estate, consulted about fire safety decisions, and fully involved in the annual FRA process with TRAs as a key source of information. We're also worried about that, which we've heard, and I'd like to ask Stephanie this question. Is our HRA going to pay for the works to be done for the right to buys? Because we paid a lot of money before, if you remember, for all the smoke alarms, which I don't think they contribute to according to the records that I've got. So we'd like to know, are they going to pay, or is it just going to be the HRA that's going to be taken again? Sorry.
Okay, we've got a second bit of your deputation.
Yeah, sorry, Julie.
Okay, so this is for item 24 of the agenda. Our deputation calls on Cabinet to withdraw item 24, which agrees to compulsory purchase appropriately about 730 metres squared of Haddonfield Estate communal gardens and grounds. We request that Cabinet agrees additional consultation to be carried out before this project is taken any further. Appendix A claims that the land shown is no longer required for its current purposes, and that's not true. Some of the land is valued, cherished Haddonfield Estate community garden and grounds. Another part is used for resident estate parking. Using the Local Government Act 1972 and the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 to remove any rights anyone might have, including leaseholders, over this land is not necessary if all neighbours are consulted, negotiate and agree. The new children's play area shown in the plan agreed by Planning Committee is not shown in Appendix A of the Cabinet report. Taking forward this development is against the Rotherhithe Area Housing Forum moratorium. No building on our estates until we sort that out, including 100% council homes at council rents and those homes allocated 100% to existing estate residents. Southwark housing project in the Rotherhithe housing area needs to be presented to the Rotherhithe Area Housing Forum for comment. I mean, this was all agreed. We agreed to build on the garages and it was negotiated. So I don't understand why all of a sudden you've included the boundaries to include the communal gardens. That doesn't seem right.
Sorry, one quick thing which I've got to be reminded by Sue. The roof still hasn't been done on the Mayflower and it's like a sieve out there, so could we sort that out as well? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Any questions? You kind of put questions to Steph. Any questions, Richard?
Thank you. I mean, Julie, I heard from you at the Rotherhithe Area Housing Forum your concerns about the issue to do with the land identified in item 24. Could you, I think some of us, or having had some discussions about this before, there's some misunderstanding about what that concern is. You talked about the communal gardens, but you sort of went further in terms of discussing some of your concerns at the Area Housing Forum. I just wondered if you'd want to spell that out a bit more for people here.
Well, our concern is that this could possibly be partial demolition of some of our blocks. And if we was all in agreement with it, we understand there's a need for council housing, and we was in agreement with this. And there was a right for light issue. And that was supposedly resolved because they dropped the blocks down to 14 with a gap in the middle to let the light in. So if there really is a big issue, and if you're so concerned about the right to light, and this is why you're looking to CPO, then perhaps it's not the right place to build after all.
Okay. Thank you. I mean, my understanding on it is quite it's a process which deals with injunctible rights and means that nobody can carry out and take out an injunction, but it's something which means that damages only are payable. We've done it on a number of occasions in order to speed delivery of developments up. So I don't think there's any fundamental change. This goes from housing to planning and back to housing within about half an hour, I think, is the legal process. It's a legal process for quite esoteric reasons. So I don't think it changes anything fundamentally. But what we'll do is make sure that there's a written response to you within the next 7 days. Unless, is there any officer in the room who can... Patrick, do you just want to come and give us a quick explanation, and then maybe you can reduce it to writing as well in due course. But just give it, why do we do, we have done this, and just remind us what, in better terms than I have done, as to why we do this, and then we'll come back to Barry's first point.
As part of the planning process, it was identified in paragraph 11 of the report on item 24. Sets out that there would be a slight daylighting issue in respect of one particular property. And in theory, that person, although the daylight being interfered with is not significant, it's just enough that they could actually apply to the court for an injunction, which would delay the scheme and create risk and slow it right down. So this is an administrative process whereby we move the land from housing purposes to planning purposes for a very, very short period, and then straight back to housing purposes, all within a day. And it's an administrative way to remove the risk, reduce the cost, and get on and build some new houses.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Patrick, and we will reduce that to writing and send that back to the area forum, so you have that on your records. Steph, do you want to answer Barry's first point, please, and I mean, I don't think we mind writing to the Secretary of State saying get rid of the 1% reduction. I'm not sure he'll listen, but we can put right, can't we? But do you want to answer the other
Yeah,
points?
so yeah, no, I totally agree around the writing, and actually I did speak to Gavin Barwell before the election about this, and his answers basically, it is what it is, and I mean, we do know that in 2020 it will go back to CPI plus 1%, but I'm quite happy to write to him, and the same with Alex Sharma, though Peter and I did write to him, to both Sabi Javid and Alex Sharma after Grenfell, and we're told that basically if we've got money in the HRA we have to use those. In terms of works for leaseholders, it's only the library where we've said that leaseholders won't be payable because it's a unique circumstance where it's a situation outside of anyone's control around that as well. Any other works, we don't know what fire safety works are needed yet around anything around that, whether we will be retrofitting sprinklers or anything like that at all, actually. But it's for libraries specifically. We said that leaseholders would not pay the cost of the bills on those ones.
Could you possibly ensure that, because I've already got fire risk assessments off you, could you possibly make sure, as we said the other day at the forum, that all TRAs are sent the regular FRA works where they walk around the estates, because we'd like to keep them so we know what's going on. Because as we said, we're basically the eyes and ears of the estates, so we do need to keep it in control, because our major worry is that all these works have been put up over the years that people are still waiting for are going to go by the ball. And that this is the first time I think I've ever been to Cabinet and said put the rent up, because we don't want to lose services. I mean, we're losing offices, we're losing services, all for a cup of coffee a week, and we've all agreed, that we'd rather keep the rents going up as they were at the time, 2%, 1%, but this is ridiculous. The government really is a joke.
I agree with you on your last comment, Barry. In fact, getting TRAs involved with FRAs, that's really important. I think, recently Scrutiny looked into fire safety. We've also made a commitment that all fire risk assessments will be put online, and all of our tower blocks are now online, because we committed to do a full risk assessment on all the tower blocks in the building, in the borough, 174 of them after Grenfell. They're now all online, so you can, if you live in a tower block, you can also check it online. But more than happy to get copies sent to the TRAs as well.
One quick thing that I wanted to ask you, which I did, I think, at Tenants' Conference, is that, as you know, our tower blocks, the doors that are put on are not up to standard. And in fact, I've got someone today who's in the right state, can't lock the doors. Are you going to do, as you say, replace the doors that are not, security as they were, because they've taken away the metal fences?
Yeah, again, we've made a commitment that if we have to remove grills, that if there's not a secure door in place, a secure door will be fitted before the grills are removed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for coming along.
That was great.
It's
Thank you.
good to see you, and have a good Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
Yeah.
And don't forget the roof and the Mayflower. Sorry.
I just checked an email while I was in here. They're going to be doing the patch repairs on Thursday for your roof.
Okay, fingers crossed. Thank you.
Okay, let's keep on moving, as they say. Southwark School Standards Report 2017, Councillor Mills.
Yes.
Page 18 of the agenda pack.
It is page 18 of the agenda pack, but actually the substantive item is in the appendices, pages 1 to 48. If I rattle through very quickly and then hand over to Nina and Terry and Kate, who has joined us from Snowsfield and Tower Bridge schools, is that right? Yeah, okay, all right. So this has become an annual report now. I think this is both a chance for us to showcase the great things that are going on at Southwark schools, but also to kind of make sure that we are clear what our priorities are and what our challenges remain. Now, the report covers a huge range of areas, including highlights like our Southwark Scholarship Scheme. I think we now have 70 scholars since we started in 2011. Anyway, I can't remember the exact figure, but we have met our council plan target on Southwark Scholars, which is a kind of great achievement since 2014, but also back to 2011. So there's a whole range of things in the report, but if I quickly rattle through a few bits on attainment, and then it would be great to hear from Nina, Terry and Kate about what they're particularly proud of, or what they think the priorities should be going forward. So I would say at early years we have a very strong record 96.6% of school-based early years provision is good or outstanding in Southwark. And in terms of good levels of development at early years, we are ahead of both London and national averages, with over 73% of our children achieving a good level of development in early years. I think that's a really, really strong record. Again, I think we're very strong at Key Stage 1. We are ahead of national averages. We are in line with London averages, so that good story continues. At Key Stage 2, actually, I think there has been further improvements on the figures that we've seen in this report in previous. We are equal or ahead of national averages, and we have closed the gap with London. I think going forward, making sure that there is no gap with London averages is our key priority. And it might be that Nina and Terry particularly want to talk about what we might do more to particularly close the gap between girls and boys at Key Stage 2. At Key Stage 4, again, provisional results for 2017 show us as being ahead of both national and London, I think, in terms of both Attainment 8 and Progress 8, which is a great story. I think the key challenge for us there is the difference in both Attainment and Progress that we see across our secondary schools, and that there are some secondary schools who I think it is right that we are challenging to do more than they are currently doing. At A-levels, I think another great year of results. There has been improvement, and that improvement exceeded the improvement that we have seen nationally. So I think really, really strong set of attainment results. And as I say, the report covers scholarships, it covers teaching awards, it covers awards for governors, it covers other issues like place planning, which we covered in some detail at the last cabinet, covers exclusions. So there is a whole range of things that the report covers, but I think particularly today it is worth us taking note of the exceptional achievement and attainment that is going on in Southwark schools.
Thanks, Vicky. Tina.
I'd like to say that I'm proud of the achievement of all of our schools. Without exception, at every key stage over the recent years, there's been challenge after challenge in terms of the way assessments are carried out, benchmarking is done, the measures keep changing, and in the face of all of those challenges, our schools rise to that challenge and meet that challenge and invariably exceed that challenge. So I'm absolutely 100% proud of the impact that our schools are having with children from the age of early years right through to A-levels. And part of the, I'll ask Kate to talk more about the support that our schools get, but we have a very strong established school improvement team and a very good relationship with our schools, primary and secondary, that has helped to steer our schools and through the range of challenges that are presented to them. So there's nothing I could pick out singularly because I'm really pleased at the outcomes at every key stage.
It's you. Yeah. I think that one's live.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I'm the executive head at Snowfields and Tower Bridge, which are probably your two closest primary schools to here. And I've been the head teacher at Snowfields since 2007. But I've worked in Southwark all my career. I came here as an NQT, and I absolutely love working in Southwark. And I think it gives such fantastic resources right on our doorstep, which really enrich the curriculum that we are able to give to our children. Snowfields is a one-form entry primary school. We have a resource base for children with autism, and we have, like many of the Southwark schools, very high levels of deprivation, children on free school meals, children with English as an additional language, and a very high percentage of children with special educational needs. Our stability is quite low. Our numbers have fluctuated over the years, and it's a really challenging school. So we've got families who are experiencing a range of needs that really impact on our children, such as adult mental health, children who are caring for a parent, poverty, housing. So we have a very high level of involvement from social care and from early help. And Snowfields, since I've been there, has been on a really long journey. From an Ofsted standpoint, we've been from notice to improve when I first became head through to satisfactory and to good. Our results when we first started were 38% reading, writing and maths, with Within 3 years, they went up to 83%, and we were on the top 100 most improved schools back in 2012. And we've been able to keep that consistently above national now, including the last 2 years with the much harder tests that we've had to do at Key Stage 2. So we've had lots of improvement, and I think that's all around us being a really strong team. So I've had fantastic, creative, really skilled teaching assistants, really fantastic teachers work at the school. I've had the same leadership team the whole time I've been there as head, and I think that's quite unusual and has really helped us move the school forward. And I've got really strong governors who know the school really well, and they don't take what we say on face value. They ask challenging questions. They make sure that what we're saying, they can back that up. And we've had some fantastic support every step of the way from the Southwark school improvement team. We've had a range of different senior advisors who've got to know the school really well, and I think Southwark know us really well, and they are able to support us, their advice at the end of the phone if we need that. We've developed really good relationships, and they're able to give us that contextual information so we can benchmark our achievements and make sure that what we think we are is what it actually is. We were also approached by our senior advisor to then start working at Cowbridge Primary School as a soft federation. They had an inspection in 2013 that requires improvement, and I think we were really keen to do that. And we've been there. Cowbridge is a very similar school to Snowfields, it's similar kinds of needs. So we started there in February 2014, and we became a hard federation in September 2015. And we were really lucky. The whole process, we had the support of everybody from parents, the local authority, our governors. It was a really positive experience. And Cowbridge then had their return Ofsted in January 2016, where we got good with outstanding leadership and management and outstanding behaviour and safety. So it was a really positive experience and a positive journey. And I think the Federation has worked really well because it's given us the chance to give security. We're both one form-entry schools, which makes us quite vulnerable. We now have one governing body who works across the two schools, so they're able to really hold us to account even better and compare across the two schools. The leadership team have worked across both schools now, and we're now working with other schools and supporting around the borough and working with the local authority. And working on improvement projects. We've been able to keep really good staff and give them opportunities that we wouldn't necessarily be able to give, and challenges. Teachers have been able to share out workload. There's been so many positives to being in the Federation that it's worked for both schools. The staff work closely together. The children go on trips. We do events together. So we've become like a two-form-entry school on two sites. And we've established some really great partnerships with local businesses as well. So I think both schools are very inclusive. We have our challenges, but we really look at our children as individuals, and we've had the support from all different areas of the school improvement team who've helped us, from the early years team to early help to our school improvement advisors. So it's been a really strong partnership the whole time we've been there, and we've seen both schools improve year after year after year.
Fantastic. Thanks very much indeed. Particularly thank you to Kate, and thanks for the work you're doing. In a previous existence, I was chair of governors at Cowbridge. That was obviously before there was ever any problems. Yeah,
I know that we're very tight on time, but we only do this once a year, so I'll keep my comments to a minimum. I don't know whether Nina or Terry, you might be able to comment on what more we could do in terms of boys' results at Key Stage 2, and whether that is our priority or whether something else should be our priority, so that when we have this conversation next year, we can ask you about that. And I suppose, Kate, having you here, it would be good to hear from you, what your priorities are in terms of kind of Snowfields and Tower Bridge. What is your key kind of challenge or area for improvement as well over the next year?
Thank you. I think the priorities are looking at the successes we've had in our early years around developing children's language, their spoken word, their vocabulary, developing communication and language skills. which we're putting that groundwork in early years foundation stage, and then it shows through phonics, is something we want to see and grow throughout our schools, because we know that engagement for most of our children, and to narrow that gap between particularly boys and girls, is around developing those early skills and embedding them in, and particularly around language and development of vocabulary. So that's one of our priorities going forward. Our first priority would always be safeguarding and looking after children. So I just say that now, we would always be putting that as our major priority within our schools. I think looking at the way we are developing our curriculum with the children, and there's been some interesting press releases from Ofsted about how they will look at schools and how they will judge schools now according to that curriculum. Not that the curriculum is broad and balanced, but it's also engaging and doing the best for all our children. So I think that's another of our priorities going forward. I think the challenges are for our communities and our schools, and Kate mentioned it, is supporting families and children with mental health issues. That's another issue. It's about dealing with mobility, which is a big issue in London, and managing that for our schools. And it's helping to work with a big range and diverse communities that we have, which our schools, I believe, are at the heart of our communities. Schools are so important as a beacon within a community, and we will continue working with schools so that every child at every then is ready for it and is successful.
I think our biggest priority going forward this year is going to be the broader curriculum. I think we are really good at the English, the maths and science, and it's keeping those plates spinning and making sure that we are still keeping those results high and addressing the needs we have with that, but also making sure that all the other subjects like history and geography and RE are having the same level of input, and teachers are getting the right support, and that we are delivering a curriculum that meets those needs and assessing them at the same sort of high standard that we really focus on with our English and our maths.
Okay, any other questions? Can I just ask a general, I mean, this is something we introduced 3-4 years ago now, and I mean, do other boroughs do this? Kind of have an overview of all the schools and a report that comes to their executive or cabinet?
A lot of boroughs do this. It might be in a slightly different format.
Yeah.
There'll be some annual reporting on outcomes.
Good.
I think we're fortunate that we have a team that the local intelligence of all our schools is phenomenal. When we get together as a team, we really know our schools very, very well. I'm sure you would say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It doesn't matter which advisor you speak to.
Yeah.
You get, they know the schools really well.
Fantastic. Well, I think another good year to congratulate everyone who works in our schools and leads our schools. So thank you, Kate, and on behalf of ourselves and obviously the people of the borough for all the work you're doing. You're kind of receiving our gratitude and thanks on behalf of all other head teachers and staff. But
It's
please
nice to hear it.
do spread the word, and thank you.
I will. Thank you very much.
And can we note this report as we're invited to? Thank you very much indeed. Great, thank you. Move on to a response to a scrutiny subcommittee report. Maisie, that's for you to respond to it.
Any officers going to join?
Yeah.
At CCG.
Yeah.
Caroline. I'll make a start. So back in September, the Cabinet received a report from the Healthy Communities Scrutiny Subcommittee that is called Southwark GP Practices, Quality of Provision and Local Support Arrangements. And it covered some things that are specifically to do with the CCG, hence Caroline coming up, thank you, and some things for the council, and some that are kind of to do with joint working. So in the report there are 14 recommendations, and I'd like to thank members of the committee who are not here now for putting them forward. They're very thought-provoking, very interesting and insightful. I think we all agree that GP provision and kind of primary care and community-based health it's hugely important for the health and well-being of everyone in Southwark, and we support anything to help that improve. Just a couple of comments I wanted to make, and then maybe I'll pass over to Caroline if there's anything specific you want to mention as well. I think I really am grateful in the recommendations for their focus on kind of preventative work and on keeping people well for longer. I think we know that's certainly to the benefit of residents, but it's also to the benefit of both the council and the National Health Service more widely, with our increasing population and our increasing older population. And that's certainly a goal that we should all be working towards, both as individuals but also as public sector bodies. And also just there's some touching kind of on planning issues, and I just sort of wanted to mention that both the new Southwark plan, which is in train at the moment, and also our work now on social regeneration, I think is leading us into probably an era of even better kind of joint working for those planning issues and those kind of strategic issues around regeneration zones and future population changes. So I think that those two kind of new bits of work coming from the council kind of herald some really exciting opportunities on that front as well. I'll hand over to Caroline in case you've got any other comments on the report specifically.
No. Thanks, Maisie. I think the first thing that I'd want to say is that it's actually we get scrutinised a lot how the council holds the CCG to account and the NHS to account quite a lot in Southwark. It's one of the things that I've really noticed as I've come here. But what is really helpful and useful is that it's a really good way of getting under the skin of what some of the kind of the really wicked issues are, if you like. So I think I think you do your job well, and I think we try to respond appropriately. And it's complex because it's not always easy to kind of address or be really specific about some of the things that people are raising as issues. And there are a number of things that recommendations have been made, and we've made some responses in terms of, well, we actually can't do some of this, but this is how we've tried to do a workaround in relation to it. I would not sit here and say that in any way, shape or form that we've got it cracked in terms of general practice, access to primary care, or ensuring that community-based care is as good as we would want it to do, but I think we've come a long way, and I hope that we've done that with the public. I'd certainly like to pay tribute to the really excellent relationship between the Public Health Department and the new Public Health Department of Southwark Council and the CCG, which is actually going from strength to strength, and really we are seeing a lot of really good joint pieces of work, a kind of a coming together of our sort of strategic direction in a way that really one would expect when you have the public health kind of being able to represent that much broader range of services that the council brings to the table rather than just a narrow health-based view. I would want to call out the fact that I think that that funding continues to be an issue, and I think that some of our kind of the prevention areas that we would really want to put some money into to get some of the synergies out remains an issue, and we've had very robust conversations over the course of the year. That's less in these recommendations, but I don't think that we should ever forget that challenge remains, and I think I'm going to hand over to everybody on that vein.
Thank you very much indeed, Caroline. Steph.
Yeah, I just want to talk about recommendation 7, which is around that there's stronger stipulations for need of new health facilities as part of future planning. And I'm a councillor in Rotherhithe, which is part of where we're having massive regeneration in Canada Water. And one of the key things that comes up at every meeting with residents is the need for new health facilities with the increase in population. So we were really, really disappointed when the CCG pulled out of going underneath Albion Street, because we had plans for a brand new surgery there. And that's really sort of upset the local community because they feel there's no commitment to, to health facilities there. So I just wonder what reassurances can I give back to my residents that I represent that actually there will be new health facilities and that this matter is being, looked into, and that we will have the facilities that the people need, because there's going to be a massive population growth, and we're not seeing anything come out about that yet. And it's something that I'm always picked up on. I get residents email me about it as well, and I just don't have an answer for them at the moment.
Thanks, Steph. I know that this is an issue. I just want to be clear that on the Albion Street issue specifically and particularly, the CCG was actually very up for moving forward on it. So this was not Albion. the way that we've got the way that general practice is structured is that the practice needed to be up for it as well, and they weren't. So that's our resident practice. So we actually do have to do quite a lot of work in partnership, and we tried very hard, but that was not something that they were prepared to bite on. We do have a really clear estates plan around that area, and I'm really happy to share that with you. And I'm happy to bring that back and make sure that that drops into your email box so that you've got something to say. Okay?
Thank you. Now, I might be wrong on this, so do correct me if I'm quoting the wrong figures, but I understand that there are 38 GP practices in Southwark, and that 4 are currently rated inadequate and 5 need improvement. So that's around a quarter of our general practice that is kind of not good enough. And that, you know, around 90% of patient interaction is at that level. So, you know, that's quite a lot of people whose kind of everyday healthcare is not as good as it should be. Now, one of those inadequate practices is the one that I'm registered at. It's right in the middle of my ward, and I think it's a cause for great concern. So I think it would be good to hear what reassurances there are from the CCG that there is a real programme of improvement to make sure that quarter of GP practices are on the road to improvement as quickly as possible. And there's one of the recommendations is around workforce planning, and it would be good to hear a little bit more about how much you are taking on the kind of both the short-term and long-term workforce planning, because, you know, I've been registered at that GP practice for 9 years, and the turnover of staff, particularly in the last 18 months, seems huge, and you know, there's a lot of locums, and that relationship that I previously had and the 12,000 other people who are registered previously had just doesn't seem to be there anymore.
Okay. Yes, I will talk to the CQC situation. Obviously, you're right with the figures. And that they're all publicly available, and it is really disappointing that we've got the level of inadequate and requires improvement results that we have. But I would say a couple of things. This is the first round of CQC visits that has been done, and whilst I make no bones for it, I think it's really, really important that actually we treat this as a baseline, and I think that what this visit has done is actually expose some underlying weaknesses in some of our practices. We actually started out, I started working in Southwark 2 years ago, slightly more than 2 years ago now. When I came here we had 44 practices. So actually one of the things that we've been seeking to do is to actually enable practices to work at a larger level of scale. So it's quite often smaller practices that have got reduced infrastructure, so they've not got a lot of management, they've not got a lot of administration support. It's difficult to attract partners that have been coming out with the inadequate and needs improvement results. So we've been working really hard in quite a structured way to support practices to work at scale. So we formed 2 GP federations, one for the north of the borough, one for the south of the borough, serving about the same population in each patch. And those GP federations actually are there to work directly with the practices to support them to deliver a higher level of quality of care, but actually to reduce some of the inequalities or the variance that you might find from GP practice to GP practice. So we've invested quite heavily in those organisations, and they manage contracts for us. They provide the 8 to 8 service, and the part of the reason for creating a general practice 8 to 8 service is actually to create loads more capacity for general practice to do some of the stuff it's really good at the same time as actually increasing access for people to appointments. We're not complacent, and we have had to deal with a lot of I would say really immediate issues in some of our practices. So we have where practices have failed and they're failing to deliver their contract. We've had to put caretaking in. We've closed some practices. We've done some of that overnight, and we've done quite a lot to actually move forward. We have a clear programme we work with. We're able to put money into practices to support them. We're able to support them to work with the Royal College of General Practitioners, and the London-wide LMCs also go into support. So there is a wide range of support that goes in, but obviously at the end of the day, what the practice needs to do is to deliver to the action plan. The proof of that is in the re-inspections, and I think where it's really worrying is where you've got a re-inspection that either takes you down or doesn't see you going upwards, and at that point we need to go in and to really assess whether or not the practice is actually delivering its contract and work with them to do that. So we're not complacent. We are working through it. It's not been great for Southwark. It's been pretty poor for Southwark. I think that's part of the nature of where we started. And we will continue to move forward to work with the practices to address the issues and to move them on. And to your practice, I am sure that we have got a strong action plan in place that we are monitoring, and we will certainly be taking full action in relation to ensuring that the support is there to enable them to do it.
Thank you very much indeed, Carolyn. Okay, well, we do need to keep moving, so can we agree that the responses to the recommendations are the responses that will be fed back to the community scrutiny report? Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much. Okay, there are item 10. There are 5 recommendations here. Richard, on the outcome of the consultation exercise on changes to day centre provision, we were asked to respond within 8 weeks. We will do that.
We will do that, Chair. This is obviously following our decision we took at the last Cabinet and the overview and scrutiny call-in of that item, where they reviewed that decision. They decided that the decision we made was the right one and was sound, but they thought there were some issues about the process that got us there that we needed to look at, and so that's what we're asking for in 8 weeks. There needs to be some work across departments to pull this together, because clearly some of this is adult care, some of it is cross-council, some of it is property, so we'll need to pull that together for 8 weeks' time.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, we carry on moving on.
Yes.
And item 11, Johnson City and the Southwark Skills Strategy.
Thank you. We'll give a couple of seconds for the team to approach. So the Southwark Skills Strategy very much developed as a result of the work done on the Economic Wellbeing Strategy, which was passed this year, I believe, or late last year. And again, the Economic Wellbeing Strategy developed on some of the work that we're doing in terms of getting residents into jobs, and very much welcome the achievement that we reached in the last few weeks of getting 5,000 residents into jobs as well. But yeah, part of that outcome of the Economic Wellbeing Strategy was identifying the key growth areas in years to come, and how do we ensure that local residents and local employers can work together to ensure that our residents are at the front of the queue of the opportunities that arose. And part of that was developing a skills strategy. And the team will go into a little bit more detail, but I just wanted to cover the 4 themes. The first theme is learners, so very much looking at, as it says on the tin, learners, employers, as it says on the tin, employers, I'm trying to cut time, employers and providers. But providers, just want to highlight that it's not just the traditional providers that you would expect, like HE and FE providers and education, both in secondary and primary school, but also identifying innovative ways of skilling up residents, such as the Construction Skills Centre and the successes of that as well. And the final area, which is funders as well. So it comes out with a number of recommendations from this report, which hopefully we can agree today, which will then lead on to a detailed action plan, which will then be able to come back to Cabinet, again working with local stakeholders right across the board, which I must add, we very much worked with, I know the team very much worked with in developing this strategy in itself. So again, happy for any questions, but I'm sure the team will probably want to go into a little bit more detail on the 4 themes.
Team, do you want to go into any more detail, or do you want to talk in high-level aspirational terms about this being a useful document? Danny, tell us why do we need a skills strategy?
Good question, Peter. I think we all recognise there are challenges in the local skills system. I think some of those challenges need to be tackled at a national and a regional level, but I think there's a lot of practical stuff we can do at a very local level as well, with employers, with providers, to make sure that actually our residents have access to the best quality provision that we can make available locally. We have seen that I think we're a bit ahead of the curve here. There's some skills strategies being developed at various levels. The Mayor of London has just released his skills strategy, which is out to consultation at the moment. So I think the Southwark skills strategy really allows us to kind of set the pace around what's needed locally, working with partners to deliver that comprehensive action plan that Johnson's mentioned, but also influence some of those more sub-regional strategies that are kind of following suit.
And I'm right in thinking the Mayor's skills strategy kind of mirrors certainly the three of the four themes. And the fourth theme of funding is pretty silent on, I think, in the Mayor's strategy, but we've taken that on and we're not afraid to talk about funding. But it's not a completely different looking document in many ways, is it? Which mirrors obviously great minds think alike, or you've been influencing people in JLA, or vice versa. Okay. Anyone want to comment on this? I think it is important because for the first time that the Mayor's had a skills strategy, it might be the first time we've had a proper skills strategy, which I think is very important. Richard is indicating.
Yeah, first of all, I think this is a good report. I'm glad some of the sort of comments we made on the track about certainly including things like T-levels, things like that. It's very good. Just picking up on Peter's last point about funding. Sorry, I promised Johnson I wasn't going to do this early. Well, anyway, which is I think clearly that's a big key challenge for us is how funding works, and it probably isn't good enough just to tell government this doesn't work. I just wonder whether how we'll be approaching that, because clearly from my past I know this can be quite a complex area. It probably needs some expertise, I guess, being brought in to explain how all of this works and work out what differences we could make and how you tweak this, because I think just us saying, or the Mayor saying, the funding system doesn't work isn't really going to get us very far. It's what we can do to actually find ways of tweaking that, or finding ways that we or the GLA could value add in some way to make it work. I think it's going to be the challenge.
Absolutely, Richard. Yeah, and there is complexity therein. One of the things in relation to the MERS skills strategy picks up on, as you say, Peter, is silent around funding. But the one thing that we have said is, as we start to think about the devolution of funding in 1920, that whole stream of work needs to be done in terms of how do we ensure that we get the best possible value. 2019-20. 2019. Yeah, so the period between now is absolutely the work that needs to be done to all of that, and how we make sure that we actually get best value locally and how that's distributed. Okay. Yeah.
I think one of the things that's kind of recognised at all levels is that employers need to have a larger role and a larger skills systems looks like. Greater ownership, yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the practical things we can do